Bernie's the latest film written and directed by Richard Linklater and starring Jack Black. Now, this is the duo who brought us films like School of Rock, which is another film I quite like. Now, Bernie was a bit peculiar really because I had no idea that this film existed, but my partner Laura, while we were doing our shopping in the supermarket, saw it, had a look at it and thought, whoa, you know, it's Richard Linklater, it's Jack Black, she likes both, so we picked it up, I bought it for her, and we watched it, and I have to say that this has been one of the more sort of surprising films of the year so far. I absolutely loved this movie, but I'll tell you why. So essentially it follows the character of Bernie, who is an assistant funeral director in a small American town, I believe, in Texas. He essentially befriends all these sort of old widows of the husbands that he's buried as part of his job. Now, it establishes very quickly that Bernie is basically the nicest man in the world, essentially. He really does go out of his way for other people, and he actually befriends a character called Marjorie Nugent, whose husband was a bank manager, and she's essentially notorious throughout the town for being horrible, like genuinely just nasty piece of work, and he befriends her. Now, they actually, and this is based on a true story, so a lot of which you see on the extras, the special features. There's not many special features, but you do see them on there. He befriends Marjorie Nugent. She's so horrible that she wears him down over a couple of years, her friends a couple of years, and then Bernie murders her. And is essentially, after he's murdered her, he has to try and make the town think that she's still alive. Needless to say, he doesn't manage it for very long. He's arrested and put on trial for murder. The townsfolk rally round him because he's such a nice guy and don't want him to be prosecuted. They actually had to move the trial because they thought that the jury would let him off. So that is the basic premise of the movie. Going in, I expected a straight up black comedy, but you don't get that. It's very much a quasi-talking head documentary. A lot of the people interviewed are real townspeople mixed in with actors for the dramatised bits. It's a peculiar film. It's like the sort of documentary you see where you mix talking heads with, you know, a reenactment, but that reenactment happens to star Jack Black and a lot of very accomplished actors, including Matthew McConaughey as the district attorney who prosecuted Bernie. So it's tonally and stylistically not something we're used to seeing very often, but it completely works. Because it's based on a true story, it definitely reinforces that sense of authenticity. And that's not to say that it makes the film too sort of heavy, and this is a minor criticism I have, which I'll get onto in a bit. But it actually, it reinforces a sense of authenticity, but it doesn't sacrifice the belly laughs. Now, I will say this film made me laugh out loud a few times. It has its funny moments. And one thing that I do feel is a little bit of a criticism that I mentioned I'd get onto is that the whole story is dealt with such a lightness of touch. You sort of don't get a sense of the gravity of the crime that was committed. He murdered this woman and kept her in a freezer for 9 months while he was sort of working up the courage to bury her. And you sort of, while you do see grisly crime scene photos and stuff like that, they sort of sidestep the gravity of the crime to focus on, you know, the townspeople rallying around Bernie, which I thought was very interesting. And it's something that is very peculiar because normally in situations like this, when an old woman would be murdered by somebody, in a small town, the town would condemn the person who did it, you know, straight away. But no, they want to save Bernie, and it's a very interesting film. It's definitely a film that plays to Jack Black's strengths. He's given the opportunity to sing, dance, and to be honest, his acting in this is fantastic and quite sort of heartbreaking at times. He plays a very sort of effeminate camp character, but somebody who comes across as very innocent and likeable and naive in a way. But needless to say, they murdered someone, so there's something, you know, wrong there. And it asks the question, what does it take to murder somebody? Can murder ever be justified? And it's for a sort of 90-minute comedy from Richard Linklater. It does a lot with the material. In my opinion, it's one of the best, most rewarding films I've seen of the year so far. It's going to be in my top 10 of the year. I absolutely loved it, but that's not to say it doesn't have its flaws. I know that the style of the quasi-documentary thing will put some people off. The fact that it's dealt with such a lightness of touch, even though it does touch upon these big issues, but everything's dealt with such a lightness of touch, even the trial in a way, oddly enough. You don't really get a sense of the gravity of the crime, but apart from that, it's a fantastic film. Standout sequences just after the murder, when Jack Black's looking at the body and wondering, oh God, what am I going to do? It then cuts to him singing and dancing in a musical at the local theatre. So it's honestly such a peculiar black comedy, but it's great, and I would recommend it because it's the sort of thing that I imagine a lot of people would walk past in the supermarket, because I think over here it went straight to DVD. Pick it up, it's fantastic. If you're a fan of film, you'll get a lot out of it. To be honest, if you're just looking for a slightly different comedy from the norm, and you're prepared to open your mind up to different styles and the quasi-documentary thing that they do, you'll get a lot from it. It's a very rewarding film. So Bernie, as I've said, is one of the best I've seen this year so far. I loved it and would highly recommend it.